Namaste. I welcome you all to this Baha Social Science Baha lecture series, and this is 122nd edition, and we have Dr. Hasan Mahmud talking about remittance as belonging, global migration, transnationalism, and the quest for home. I'm Arjun Kharel, and I'm affiliated with Social Science Baha, where I'm a research fellow and I also teach at Kendra University. So before I invite Professor Hasan Mahmud to give his talk, then there are a few things I would like to mention. So one is, please turn off your cell phones or please keep it on silent mode, and if you get the call, please pick up your calls outside the hall. And so the lecture will be, so for lecture we have 45 minutes allocated, so it will be around that. And after the lecture, there will be question answer session of around 30 to 45 minutes. So I'd like to provide a quick introduction of the speaker today. So Hasan Mahmud is an assistant professor in residence in the liberal arts program at Northwestern University in Qatar. He earned his PhD in sociology from the University of California. His teaching and research engage questions of globalization, international migration, migration and development, identity politics, race and racism, and global ethnography. His research has been published in leading academic journals, including Annual Review of Sociology, Current Sociology, Migration and Development, International Migration and Sociological Perspectives. Besides Remittance on Belonging, which is published by Rutgers in 2024, and Professor Mahmud is the co-editor of Beyond Economic Migration, Social, Historical, and Political Factors in U.S. Immigration, published through New York University, 2023. He has delivered invited talks at institutions including UC Berkeley, UCLA, Northwestern University, Sophia University, the American University in Cairo, and the University of Dhaka. He also contributes regular columns on migration, remittances, and development in newspapers in Bangladesh and abroad. So, Dr. Hasan Mahmud, so I welcome you to this lecture, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arjun, for your generous introduction. I'm really happy about it. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to people in Baha for making this lecture happen, because without your invitation, this might be difficult for me to get here and speak to you. I especially thank Deepak Thapa for his invitation, as well as his support throughout the process of arranging everything up to this point. Although he is not here, I would like to see him maybe in some capacity someday somewhere else. I would also like to thank Zivan Bania for his because he was my first point of contact, and he initiated this conversation. And last not the least, I would also like to thank Ms. Bindya Shrestha for her instrumental support in arranging everything here. And finally, of course, I like all of you who are here today to facilitate this event and waiting to hear from my works. Before getting into it, I would like to give you a little background about why I was so excited and interested in this particular talk. Because I have a lot of connection with Nepal, although I had not been physically present here before. I knew some Nepali scholars when I was a Monbusho scholar in Japan during 2006 and 2008. At that time, I did my master's, and that's how I also got to know some of the Nepali migrants over there, particularly those who owned little, Nepali restaurants, but all Nepali, Bangladeshi, Indian restaurants, all are known in Japan as Indo-Kare restaurant, right? So that's where my interest in Nepal grew. But even before that, when I was little kid, I would watch SAF games like football, and Nepal was really a strong football, team at that time. I still remember, I think Horikatka.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think we lost to Bangladesh.
yeah, and then more recently, in my program at Northwestern University in Qatar, every year we have like 5-6 Nepali students, and some of the best students in my classes are actually from Nepal. So that's how I already have a very huge positive impression about Nepal. I mean, scholarly as well as on the migration front as well. Right. So from there, I would like to begin my talk today. So whenever we think about migration and remittances, we usually think about migration leading to remittances and development, right? And no wonder most of those discussions begin with economics in the background, like people sending money, earning money, and investing, consuming, and whatnot, right? However, in my research on migrants' remittances, I do not take that economic background into consideration. Rather, I come from a different angle, right? That's what I'm going to share with you today. So, on the screen, I know it's crowded, right? But I really want you to focus on the stories. These are two stories of remittances, acts of remittance, right? So in the first stories, you see that a Bangladeshi living in Los Angeles. At the time when I was interviewing him, in 2013, he was a legal permanent resident, we call green card holders, right? Later he became a citizen, and he invited his parents, his siblings, his wife and kids. So he told me in one day that my mother has asked for $400 in addition to what I regularly send her every month. She wants to buy a gold necklace for a wedding present for my sister's daughter. This is because she gave an expensive wedding gift to my elder brother's daughter a few months ago. I don't like this, meaning that the additional $400. He said, I think I don't have the same responsibility as an uncle for my sister's daughter as I have for my brother's daughter. He was referring to, patriarchal family norms. But my mother wants to be equally generous to both of her granddaughters. This is putting an extra burden on me. Now, when we think about remittances, we know that we often talk about migrants' self-interest and altruism. Now, let me ask you this question. Is this guy named Rahman, was he acting based on his self-interest or altruism? Let's move on to the next story. This is from another Bangladeshi I call Mia. He was telling me that I send more than half of my monthly salary to my father in Bangladesh every month. Besides, I have borrowed a large sum of money to reconstruct my old house. As the only son, I will inherit it and will need to renovate it someday. I'm sending money to my father to refurbish it now so that he and my mother can live in it in comfort and feel happy about having a modern house. Again, I'm asking the same question. Is Mia acting on behalf of his self-interest or altruism? So, I started reviewing the literature on self-interest and altruism, not only in migration literature, but in proper development economics literature. And I found that the origin of this idea of self-interest and altruism and not as motivations for for individuals act actually originated in Gary Baker's two articles published, one in 76 and the other in 79. And perhaps you might have heard about his rotten kid theorem, in which he tried to combine family studies and the idea of homo economicus, like self-interested or rational individuals. He tried to merge these two within family context by saying that individuals are of course social and cultural beings, but within family, strictly defined family situations, they can be altruistic. However, I reviewed this literature, and also I reviewed the original migration literature that talks about migrant remittance in terms of self-interest and altruism, particularly Lucas and Turk's publication that came out in 1985. Yeah, 85. And I found that there are some gaps in those literature that have not yet been fulfilled. For example, they continuously and consistently fail to separate altruism and self-interest. Then also they reduce altruism to a form of self-interest, which means they cannot understand or capture true altruism. But true altruism exists in reality, right? And then there is also methodological problem. Most of these studies that try to define or understand migrant remittance in terms of altruism or self-interest, they use survey data. And those surveys are conducted usually in the receiving communities, and especially in absence of the migrants who actually send the remittance, right? So there is a clear bridge between who is acting, which is sending remittance, and who is using or consuming the remittance. So based on how the recipients are consuming the remittances, these scholars try to understand by implication, not by directly asking the migrants about why they send remittances, but looking at how their remittance is utilized by someone else. These scholars try to understand whether that remittance was originally sent for either altruism or self-interest. And there are multiple empirically based, like large-scale survey data in articles, academic articles, showing that migrants' motivations significantly differ from the remittance user's motivation. That means by looking at how the remittance is used, it is really not possible to understand the original motivations for sending remittances. So this is the critical part which I will move on from now, and I got a publication out of this critical evaluation of the economic understanding of migrant remittances in terms of self-interest and altruism, and that's it. That story is closed for me. I no longer go back. So what I do instead in my studies, I focus on remittance as an act, not just as money, as an act that involves money, but that may also involve non-monetary aspects. For example, ideas, which Peggy Levitt and others call social remittance. So remittance do not necessarily have to be only money. It can be idea, it can be encouragement, it can be pushback, and so many things, right? But in my study, of course, I focus mostly on financial remittances. And I also identify actors. Number one, who generates the money? It's the migrant itself. But then there are also other actors on other ends, like in the family, the relatives, origin community, etc., so on and so forth. And I conceptualize all of those on the other end as home, where particular individuals live and where migrants send remittances. Right, and the context in which I examine this act of sending remittance is social relations and cultural patterns that embed all these actions. Because it's not just like any other or standard economic act like we do in the marketplace. We don't know the other party, we just go there, we find things like products to buy, we pay, we get it, the transaction happens, and that's it, like arm length economic transaction. This is not. This is the polar opposite of it. Any remittance to happen requires long-term, long-standing social relations, culturally, controlled or culturally shaped social relations, which are not arm-length relation, which stay, which are sticky, and for which we care a lot. I will get back to this point later. And then I use the idea of moral economy as an analytical, framework. Rather than standard economics, I use moral economy. Then I look at what kind of shared norms and values that the particular acts of remittances I see are embedded in. Then I introduce the idea of social belonging, which I will come back a little later. And I use interpretive sociology, which means from Durkheimian tradition, interpretive sociology means we see something at the empirical level, but that's not where we look for explanation. We interpret the empirical to understand what is behind the empirical, which is not obvious. For example, we may see two individuals interacting. I'm interacting with you in a friendly manner, right? But we are also doing something in particular ways which are not obvious in empirical, but people can understand that we are like academic colleagues, right? If you were my brother, I would do certain things subtly, of course, that would signal to you that it is more than academic relation. It is way more, right? So we often do it frequently. Like we see something, we interpret and understand it in more precise terms. That's what I also want to do. I see migrants sending remittances, but then I try to understand this act by interpretation, and that requires me to situate this act in very specific context, in time, in geography, in social and cultural world, right? So I will quickly pass it on. I use what we call in sociology global ethnography, which originated with Michael Burawe in Berkeley, but in UCLA sociology department we had like really hard time taking on that, because UCLA aligns more with conventional grounded theory approach. And so Rosa Waldinger was there, Ting Kwang Lee was there, Professor Timmermans was there, Jack Katz was there. Like they are all like big figures in sociology of ethnography, and they would always engage in debates which would make our life really difficult, like for graduate students. But somehow I survived, and what I did is global ethnography, which means that I already had theoretically formulated assumptions or hypotheses. We don't call it hypotheses, just assumptions about why migrants send remittances. And then I would go to the field. I would selectively engage with migrants, and that would help us to quickly wrap up our ethnography, right? So it was we would call it like a shorthand ethnography, because the conventional camp of ethnography, like grounded theory approach people, they wouldn't recognize as ethnographers. They would say, but anyway, so I studied Bangladeshis in Tokyo for about nearly 2 years, and Bangladeshis in Los Angeles for about 2.5 years. Actually, I lived in both places among these migrants, and I wanted to familiarize myself with their way of life within their daily schedule, and I would insert myself into their network of friends, network of colleagues, and a lot of things, right? Only because I wanted to understand their perspective, meaning the migrants' perspective about why they think sending remittance is not only necessary, it is normal. Something that is normal. Like one doesn't have to even migrate to send money to their parents and relatives, right? So for example, if any of you, by the way, how many of you have migrants in your close relatives, in your family or extended kin? Do you have migrants in your family? Oh, wonderful. This is interesting, because now I will tell you something. I will ask you, like, did you ever happen to think about why my migrant relative is sending money? Is he calculating self-interest? Never, right? So that also happened to me as well. I was there as a Monbusho scholar, and I would have, I don't drink, So without, if you can cut off your drink, expense on drink, you actually end up saving a couple of $100 from the scholarship money, right? That's what I did, and my parents are school teachers, so I would often send, like every now and then, I would send them a couple of $100 in remittances. At that time, I wouldn't say, well, I still send my my mother money, but I don't say remittance. In fact, in nowhere in Tokyo, Los Angeles, or New York, or even Doha, where I am currently studying, I never heard migrants using this term remittance. That was also one question that would always make me uncomfortable. Where did this thing come into the literature that we are so much obsessed with? Like remittance. Migrants never call it remittance. They never sit on calculating their self-interest or altruism, right? They have a totally different world of, expectations, world of desires, world of disappointments and frustrations, a lot of things, and these are deeply emotional. They are extremely happy about, for example, being able to purchase a really expensive land or building a lavish house in nowhere, right? And they are also extremely frustrated when they see all the savings, like years of savings were, squandered, like misused by somebody in their family or whatnot, right? So their world is really deeply emotional. I wanted to get at that emotion as well. And since I myself is a migrant, a remittance sender, I could quickly connect with them, right? So that's what I would do. And just to give you a little background, I think Nepali migrants in Japan have pretty much similar, background in Nepal, in Tokyo as well. Mostly they are temporary, even though they are highly educated or not, they live on temporary visa, right? And then majority of them are low skilled into service works like restaurants and delivery and other kinds of like service works, like really the things we call precarious work. And inevitable, their return out of Japan is inevitable, right? But for some, it is stepwise. For example, those who are highly qualified, highly educated, and those who are able to save some money, I just can't those who are able to save some money, they would try to find countries where they can apply and qualify on point-based immigration. So Canada, Australia, New Zealand, some of the European countries, right? They try to go there. If not, then of course back to Bangladesh, or in case of Nepal, it's Nepal, right? And this is not my definition of Japan. Actually, number of my interviewees, like highly educated and established, almost like Japanese. In fact, some of my childhood friends, like my friends with whom I went to middle school and high school, like pre-undergraduate program, we went together, and then some of them went to Japan with Monbusho undergrad scholarship. They attended undergrad and master's programs in Japanese. They are almost like Japanese. They just look Bangladeshi, but they speak fluent Japanese in kanji characters. Their behavior is very much Japanese. I cannot get along with them, like 1 hour max, and then I get bored because they behave like Japanese, right? Everything is Japanese. They got Japanese citizenship, like passport, and still they define Japan as forever foreign. They said, one day I am moving out, and they did move out. So I interviewed many of them, but 2 of them got their citizenship in 2012, and by 2013 they were already in America with scholarship from Japan government as Japanese nationals. Right? One went to an MBA program at Northwestern University, and the other went to Harvard. And once they finished, they got like highly paid corporate jobs in Japan and in America. They got green card, and once their green card matured, they left Japanese citizenship and got American citizenship. I'm telling you because these migrants, like Bangladeshis, defined with evidence that Japan is not for permanent settlement, even if they get citizenship. And then they gave me detailed accounts like cultural problems, social problems, legal problems, a lot of things which I think I have in this book, chapter 2nd, chapter 3rd, no, chapter 2nd, after introduction, second chapter, right? And by contrast, in Los Angeles, I met a lot. I interviewed a little more than 70 in total. About 50, 45 or 48, I interviewed in Los Angeles. However, I was living with them, so I did not even need to do those interviews in order to understand their experience, right? So there I found permanent settlement as a norm. Those who went there for higher education, they found a professional job and they eventually became citizens. And then they would bring their family, their relatives, their siblings. Those who enter with by winning DV lottery, they also started off with as a legal permanent residents. And then there were some who went there as the relative of someone who already got US citizenship, right? So, and a few, I think I interviewed 8 persons who were visa overstayers. 2 of them actually crossed through the border between US and Mexico on foot. And the experience, the stories are really dramatic. Like one of them walked continuously for more than 3 days at a stretch, just to be able to evade detection and deportation, right? So for them, like regardless of their legal status, US was permanent home because they were able to find ways through legal avenues, but also like bypassing legal avenues. They found their ways to settle permanently in the US, and that's why just polar opposite of what Japan is for Bangladeshis. Regardless of their legal status, every Bangladeshis told me that Japan is not a place to permanently settle. Whereas every Bangladeshi in America told me that it is their permanent settlement home. Right. So I observed that the amount of money and the inclination to send in remittances was always high in Japan. Very few of the migrants I met there would have a savings account in Japan. Some of them had savings accounts with very nominal savings. They would have current account, and everything they would save back in Bangladesh. But in case of America, it was kind of like mixed. Initially, they would send a lot of money to Bangladesh, primarily to for family expenses or for preparing their siblings or their children for further migration to America, right? Towards like after a couple of years, when they were able to bring their family in America, their remittance would sharply decline because they didn't need to send money for family maintenance, right? But then for those who were not in middle class or upper middle class, like those who were in working class situation, they would not be able to save a lot of money or enough money to be able to purchase anything in America. But with like $200, $300 per month of savings, they would still be able to purchase land or small business or an apartment in Dhoka and other urban areas where return is really high in financial terms. At the same time, they would also be able to claim a status of homeowner who rent the home outside, which is like also a kind of like social status, just like owning a house. So there is a mixed motivation for migrants in America to send money, Right. So what I found, all in all, what I found across their life cycle, initially remittance starts off really high, then it sharply continues to decline at a certain point, after which it rebounds. For working class migrants, when they see that they cannot do anything, for example, by with a savings of monthly savings of say $500, nothing, they cannot find anything. But with $500 in savings, if they send this money to Bangladesh, they can purchase a really expensive house or apartment, or they can invest in a business, joint business venture, right? So they start sending money for those. And for upper class, like really rich people who who approach retirement or already retire, they send their children to good schools. The children graduated from schools and colleges and started their own career somewhere on the other side of the country, between between Los Angeles and New York. To give you some perspective, the direct flight takes more than 5 hours. So the country is so big. The children move out of the parents' house into different places, and they only come to see their parents like once or twice a year maybe. That's the time when the first generation migrant, they retire or approach retiring, when they also lose or begin to lose their professional networks, right? They start feeling lonely, right? That's the point when they feel the need to, what they told me, reconnect to the roots. Interestingly, the root is not there anymore, because the migrant sponsored all of the or most of the siblings already in America, right? And many of the friends also moved out of the village. Oh, by the way, when they talk about reconnecting to the roots, not to the city. Root means, like in Bangla we call Bari and Basha. Bari means where my grandparents and my parents are from, and Basha means where, mostly in cities, where we just purchase something, and they also never or usually do not identify themselves with the Basha, but with Bari. So they refer to Bari as their roots, where they most likely they don't have anybody close. So what they do, they go there, they make physical visit, they meet with the community people, with the people in the masjid, or in if Hindu, then in the temple, and they start donating to the masjid or temple and schools and like other community projects, like for Muslims like Idgah, we call Idgah. So they start sending money to those community projects in order to feel that they belong, or they are living, and people recognize, oh, this is the son or grandson of this and this. Oh, they still remember me. So nice, right? So these rich and highly educated people, they start sending remittances, which can be defined in literature as charitable remittances, right? And often those amount really in significant numbers, right? That's important. So that's why I see a pattern like I call Z-shape. Although in the book I said I have continuously been modifying my thing. So I also looked into individual family life cycle, like individuals and their family life cycles. And what I found, they start off within the context of parental family, right? Many of them, when they migrate, they were single migrants, mostly sons. But then they get married, they start growing up, with their own family, but also with their siblings' family, and then eventually parents pass away, siblings get separated, they divide family property into their individuals, shares, and then eventually they start living their own life in the nuclear family or centering on the nuclear family, right? And towards later life, they start reconnecting with siblings if they are still alive or other relatives. for the same thing I just said. So for them, belonging changes, belonging to the family changes, like for every one of us. We often call this is my family, but that my family keeps changing over our life cycle. So I also wanted to bring that idea into understanding when, to whom, what amount of money migrants are sending. Now I have a question. Why the story I was trying to tell you may matter to Nepal as well? As I said, Bangladesh and Nepal are two different countries, right? But I'm visiting with my family, and my elder daughter, 9 years old, she'll say, "Oh, this is almost like everywhere I go, she finds something good," and she says, "This is almost like Bangladesh. Just it is a little more hilly, or just it is a little more, like green." Because we visited our home and their my in-laws' house. Both are in big cities, so not too much green. But I happened to take them out of the city one day, and she was saying, "Oh, it's almost like countryside in Bangladesh." Yeah, the people are also good, and only the thing is that their food is a little less spicy. I say, "Yeah, you're right." So we have so much in common. Two countries, but culture-wise, social custom-wise, we have so many things in common. That's why I felt that my stories may resonate substantially with Nepali migrants as well, right? But besides my personal impression about Nepal, literature also shows that Bangladesh and Nepal are two of the major labor migrant sending countries. The two countries are also among the top recipients of migrants' remittances, and the two countries have a lot of things to share, both negatively and positively, right? And one is the Gen Z movement, right? We had it the previous year, and you had it the following year. So, all in all, I think my stories have a lot of similarities, and I would like to explore it more in our Q&A session. But here I just want to tell you something. My study of remittances is not economic. It is something different. As I said, I started off with a different kind of question. Right? Because when we think about remittances, it's economics. Everywhere it's numbers. How much money migrants are sending, right? But in my stories, I saw and I tell people that a lot of social relation are present there, and remittance are actually practices of belonging, because migrants send remittances only to people they care about, only to the people they think they are part of. Right? They don't simply send money to home. They send money to home. Home is where we belong. And that's where, from anthropological literature, I brought this idea of belonging into my study to understand what migrants are actually doing. They are actually securing their place in the world they feel they belong. They are maintaining their place in the world they feel they belong, and that has a lot of important connotation, because one day I can just fast and do not go to any restaurant or market to buy anything, right? But for remittance, migrants don't have that luxury. If they need to send money to the family, they will have to do it under tremendous pressure. And sometimes they will send money and feel extremely happy, right? Because they were able to make the people they care the most happy, right? So this is my story about remittances. Again, I thank you so much. I would like to have some questions with you so that we can have a better discussion. But before that, I would like to ask this question answer session with a question myself. What are the things you heard from people? Like, what are the misconceptions people have about migration and migrants in Nepal?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that in the Bangladesh context. But yeah, we have remittance is a big topic, and you'll find multiple news stories or op-eds written in newspapers every week or sometimes every day as well. And one misconception is that migrants or migrants' families don't spend their remittances wisely. So that is kind of allegation, but very you'll find such stories very frequently. But I think it's good to hear from the other participants. Yeah, I think if someone wants to respond to.
So, what are some misconceptions you heard about migration and migrants in Nepal?
That every time someone goes outside the country, people will start demanding.
Every migrant going there is
actually going to on strict ton of money and bring everything over here in Nepal and providing to everybody. That is the every time someone goes there, people will start asking for iPhone, jewelry. There's a list of things. Then assuming that everyone going there is going to bring a lot of money and bringing it back here. Not everyone who goes outside is going there because they are going to earn a lot of money outside.
Can you also actually give your short introduction?
I'm Pragya Nepal. Okay, I was introduced here when it was in Facebook. I came here from Facebook directly. That's all.
Namaste. This is Rak Marfel. I'm the faculty of SERA, Tribhuvan University. It's a very nice talk. Yes, you presented, and we all got benefited. Your question was very comprehensive, but still, from all the Nepalese prospects, what we think of about the migrant people is that there are two very extreme contexts. One is, for example, once when migrant live in foreign country, what special occupation or profession they are taking, and how far their profession and work is dignified. Whether they are being able to get the salary or remuneration or payment as for the country's rule and regulation or not. This is also a question that every Nepali think of about it. And there are always matter of social protection. Once when they migrate to foreign country, almost people think that they are going there for earning, right? That earning is very difficult. As you are also the migrant, how difficult is the rule, regulation, act, everything is affected here. So sometimes once when the migrant people works in a very systematic way with following the rule and regulation, by different the exceptional cases, they are being caught in different shoes also. And some of them might have been able to kept in jail also. These are also many issues that outside is there. And from inside, once when they send the money, it is also obvious that the country is getting benefited. But still, there is some misconception that how that received remittances have been utilized for the capacity building or capital formation or making the social harmony better off are so many issues. And especially for the case of Nepalese migrant, it is considered that many Nepalese migrants, they participate in working with the D3 works. It is also a difficult matter to speak, as many Nepalese are intellectual as well. They do teach in university. They work in a very high skilled job and receiving a very handsome salary as well. So these things cannot be answered within a short question as an objective question. It is to be studied with bringing from parameters, from methodological tools, and it will take a time, I think. Thank you.
For question, please keep your question short, and again, give your introduction, and we can take maybe 3 questions at a time, right? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Hasan Mahmud. I'm Solal Rana. I work in Pragya Learning Collective. And really, I really like the way you presented the whole thing, very very informally, with giving you a lot of context. And also at the first question that you put on towards the end, it all connected. Sort of in the middle, it sort of felt like you're going on your own journey also at times, but it all was so relevant to how you connected it. And for me, it was very insightful. This storytelling presentation that you get, very insightful. I was also thinking why there's no data, and then you mentioned this is not an economic survey, but really insightful in a way that everything connected towards the end. My only sort of question is when you mentioned remittance as belonging, remittance as the other forms, and you also mentioned that there is a cycle towards in the family you go from nuclear cycle to the all the other things. In a demographics from a perspective, how would a young migrant worker compare with someone who's stayed in that country for 10 years in terms of remittance, in how they feel with the remittance? So that's the first question. And the next one is does it also change where it comes from, within your country? You mentioned Bari and the other one I forgot. Basha. Yeah. I was trying to connect with Nepali words also because Bengali and Nepali are very, very, I've worked in West Bengal, so I know very much about it. But I couldn't connect with that. But I just wanted to know, from a village perspective, maybe the belonging is stronger than from the urban perspective. Were you able to figure out that in your research? So those were my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your excellent questions and also sharing experience from your perspectives. I will start off with the first. I didn't get a question, but I got your experience about misunderstanding migration and migrants in Pragya, right? So it is true. Every society in the world, forget about migration. Whenever somebody in a family graduates, grows up, gets into a job, family members naturally expect something, right? Gifts or sometimes even money, financial support. That's same for migrants as well, because everyone knows that the migrants are going abroad because they expect earning, and they are earning high compared to when we consider the currency conversion. It's huge, right? So expectation proportionally goes up, which creates a lot of pressure, and the migrants have to perform up to those expectations, and that's one of the biggest source of the stress that every migrant or most migrants have to deal with, right? And the other thing is, as I said, as you also mentioned, that in the literature, particularly in policy cycles about migration and development, there is an idea that migrants' families do not know how to properly utilize remittances. Come on. It is my money. Who are you to tell me whether I am efficient in spending my money or not? This is really unacceptable, right? And it gets into migrants' heart. It gets into my heart as well, right? You cannot say how I am supposed to spend my money. This is my money, this is my family's money, and the experts have no business whatsoever. The politicians have no business whatsoever. So the idea of migrants' remittance as a development funding is unfounded, is unreasonable, and I would go as far as to say it is offensive. Right? And for saying this and for having this impression about migrants' remittances, I often get into uncomfortable debate with like big names in migration studies. But Alhamdulillah, I now am an associate professor, so I have tenure, and I don't actually have to care about if someone is disappointed. But this is true, right? I am sending money to my parents, you are sending money to your parents, who may be backdated in the eye of the policymaker or in the eye of the politician. But so what? My father or my mother has every right to spend in whatever way she wants the money she receives from me, and that's what she does. Even my brother, who is living also in Bangladesh, doesn't approve the way my mother spends the money I send her. I say, absolutely, she can do whatever she wants, don't bother her. And he sometimes complains to me, but that's fine. So getting into your questions, it is obvious, and there are qualitative data showing the differences in the level of sense of belonging among migrants from big cities and migrants from countrysides or villages. Because in villages, we know that in general people live in with family, with close kins, but also with neighbors. And often you would be able, even if you try, you would be able to see that the relationship, like closeness of relationships between neighbors in a village, is sometimes deeper than the kind of relationships between say cousins living in big cities, right? So that factors into this idea of sense of belonging from people in villages and from people in cities. And that's why you would see that villages attract more remittances from abroad than cities. In most cases, even if you see migrant remittances coming to cities, those are usually in terms of investment in real estate, like housing projects, or in particularly newly developing marketplaces, where again migrants from countryside are investing in those. So it's not migrants from cities. And from my experience, like field level experience, I can tell you that I know a couple of families from cities who migrated and they never looked back. Simply. They even when some of them were in Bangladesh, they were already living into a Western lifestyle. All of their kids went to English medium schools. Their English is proper, like accent free, almost accent free. Then they are Bangla, right? So they are already uprooted from Bangladesh, and they already live in USA or UK even before physically going there. So in that way, I see that wherever the sense of belonging is stronger, remittance flows to that direction more than compared to other places. And that I find that association between belonging and remittance consistent over generations, like among younger generations, among middle-aged generation, and among earlier. And that actually gave me a amount of confidence, so much so that I now am very confident, and with my publication coming into annual review of sociology, I am academically also confident to tell you that yes, remittance is belonging, because we as you see, I have introduced a new question. For migrants, remittance is a normal act. They don't have to calculate self-interest, or they don't have to sacrifice their self-interest, which would be called altruism, while sending money. they send money just as a normal act, right? So my question was, what is this that makes sending remittance to the migrants a normal act? So, and then it gets me into the social world, into the cultural world in which they live and they belong. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, we can take a few more questions.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you for your time, sir. I'm Sambhav. I'm currently doing research in policy making for this particular government ministry here in Nepal. I mean, you did say that you are not focused on economic or financial part, but my questions here are, so I'd love to know your answers with the best of your ability. It's a double-ended question, so could you touch on the government's role in making sending remittance cheaper and safer for the workers? Secondly, do you think government's recent policy of giving 2.5% cash back for sending remittance through formal channel, is that a framework you could see working in Nepal as well? Thank you.
I think so. It is this policy of like giving 2.5% in incentive is introduced in Nepal now.
No, that's in Bangladesh. That's
Yeah,
2018. So I was wondering if your thoughts on if that could work in Nepal as well.
Well, government's interest is in getting the remittance money flowing through formal channels, because only that's how the government has a hand on the money, right? Because I guess you also have this thing called hundi, right? If it is hundi, then the government has no way to even figure out whether money is flowing and how much is flowing, right? Only if it goes through banking channels, government gets to know how much money is coming in, right? And that is the government's motivation to incentivize migrants positively by offering that 2.5% incentive if the money comes through proper channels, right? But then there are also some strict measures, like if someone is caught in money laundering, then there will be punishment. So I think from migrants' point of view, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because the migrant is not calculating whether he or she is going to get 2.5%, but rather the migrant is calculating how much money the family back home requires. No matter what, he is going to send it. And if the family is not there, no matter how much money the government is offering in incentive, the migrant is not simply going to send that money because his family is not there. Right. So there is something most of the migration policy experts get wrong, and their projections don't get to the results they expect, because the foundation is not based on the migrants' perspective. It is based on non-migrants' perspective, right? So I think one of the way to reconcile this might be to talk to some migrants. There are ways of finding representative sample from different groups of migrants, from different countries, from different professions, different levels in occupation, and then incorporate their ideas into migration policies. And in that way, policymakers may be able to formulate something more effective, more embedded in the migrants' experience. Other than that, I think they will keep miscalculating, they will keep forecasting.
Yeah. We can
Yes.
ask 2 questions.
Yeah. My name is Miki Upreti. I am originally Japanese, but a Japanese immigrant to Nepal. I've been here for 35
Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa. I've been here for 35 years, and thank you very much for your choosing your higher education destination to my homeland. I so much appreciate your decision. And your study is quite interesting for me, because you compared with the society of Japan and the United States, right? And you find some Bangladeshi or Nepalese immigrant staying in Japan is like not permanent, right?
Yeah.
for the time being. But in the US, the situation is very different. They are planning to stay in the United States permanently. And in that sense, you must know Japanese society is very much homogeneous.
They believe so.
Oh yes, yeah. And now Japan has become a destination for Nepalese people to migrate to. But after World War II, lots of Japanese people go abroad for migration.
Yeah,
Especially poor farmers' families, not the eldest son, the second and third son. And I think it's not enjoyable for me, but the, how can you say, Japanese people feel migrant. It's not only the positive things. And my question is, what is the difference for the migrant people in Japan and the United States? And why such kind of differences happening in Japan and the United States? Thank you very much.
Or we can take one more question if there is. Okay.
My name is Kensis. Thank you for your brilliant presentation. It's a fresh take on migration. Let me start with one misconception. For a long time in Nepal, it was thought migrants, they earn a lot because people would see bringing in money. But they were also really trying to save money. That's why we could see the money here. Also, they would bring gold and others, and that's where they would make profit, and that's where we could see the migrants' money. And building on this, and this is where I like your idea of giving them agents. Migrants they're always agents of their own lives. We shouldn't reduce them to their numbers, remittances, and other things. So that's the thing. But while you painted them as agents of their own lives, with their own self-interest, and with your story towards the end, if they are sending money back home, seeking belonging, are they forever foreign? And have you painted yourself again into that reductionism, by describing your migrants as lonely, alienated in a foreign country? Thank you.
One more question. Sure.
I will try. I
Okay.
guess I got both of your central questions, so I should be fine.
My name is C.K. Lal. I write for newspapers. I have one observation and one question. The observation is remittance as a formation of belonging is, of course, a very generalized kind of conclusion. There is another aspect for minorities, countries that are not as homogeneous as Bangladesh, monoethnic. Say, for example, a Muslim university topper from Aligarh goes to Germany, becomes a professor. For him, the remittance sent to Western Uttar Pradesh is getting rid of his guilt consciousness that he, despite being a leader, possible leader, he deserted his community back home in India. Similarly, for a Dalit from Nepal who goes to United States, does well, runs a hair cutting salon per cut $15 to $25 and sends money home, once again, it's kind of a guilt, getting out of the guilt that I cannot bring you to United States, I cannot come there and endure your pain, fight for your rights. So, well, this is me, doing it. So getting rid of the guilt. These are my two observations. One observation actually. My question is more specific. Till 2008, I thought I met a Bangladeshi gentleman who had been in Japan for 50 years married to a Japanese lady, but still not granted a Japanese citizenship. When did it change that Bangladeshis or Nepalese could become Japanese citizenship? Is it recent? So that is my question. Thank you.
Thanks for your wonderful questions and reflections. I will answer in reverse order. So I will start with Mr. Lal first. It started in 2012. In 2012, and interestingly, at that time I was interviewing somebody, and he was telling me in his house, really nice house. He was a mid-level at that time. He was a mid-level engineer in Toshiba Corporation, and he was telling me, he was actually my friend. One of my friends. He told me, look, this time I'm hosting you in this apartment. Next time I will host you in the more luxurious compound across the street. I say, why not now? You earn so much money. You are almost Japanese, right? He said, no. They said that you have to have Japanese passport, and I have already applied, and I am going to get it. Next year you come again, because that was my 4 weeks visit. Summer visit, and next year I was scheduled to be there for 1 year field visit, right? So next year I went there in the same house and said, what happened? You asked me that you would host me on the other luxury apartment. He said, no, it didn't came through, because when I gave them my passport, they said, oh no, you need to be real Japanese. You know, real Japanese means ethnic Japanese, right? So that actually, I will connect this with your reflection and questions. But before that, I also want to reply to Mr. Lal's question about guilt feeling. Your question is beautifully answered by one of Edward Said's reading, Reflection on Exile. To be frank, I also have a little bit of that guilt feeling, if you may call it. Because if I stayed on in Bangladesh, perhaps I could become one of, for example, a brigadier general now, because my friends are now brigadier general. Or I could be a BCS officer, or I could be into politics because my family is in local politics. You know, I am none of those, and I have no influence whatsoever in Bangladesh. And so whenever my friends or my relatives think that I have become really big, but I cannot help them in any way in Bangladesh, I feel sorry for them. Right? So that guilt feeling is also to some extent in myself. Actually, in most people who live outside of their homeland are likely to have that guilt feeling like Edward Said did. Right? So this is a common experience of like people in diaspora, particularly those who are seen as successful in their diasporic life. That guilt feeling is going to stay and going to stay on. Edward Said came to this conclusion from his review of classical and medieval literature, like not from migrants' life. And I come to this conclusion from my interaction with migrants since 2006, when I first went outside of Bangladesh, and I actually never had the chance to go back to Bangladesh, and increasingly it is becoming clear to me that I will never be able to go back. Right. So that guilt feeling is going to stay with migrants, like diaspora, successful persons in diaspora. So about your question of like feeling of alienation, that is also kind of like connected with this. The sense of home or living in home is very rare. The people who migrate to America believing that they would achieve their what is called American dream. They would go there, they would get education, a middle class life, a house of their own, and a very big name car, right? As long as they don't achieve those, they keep trying hard, right? And once they achieve those, they realize that they achieved a middle class life. They sent their children to middle class life. They own their house, big house, really big house, and they own their car or a company. Like they are self-sufficient. They should be feeling satisfied that they were able to achieve their American dream, and that moment they start realizing that they are leading to a miserable, lonely life. Right. I'm talking about those who are successful, and those who are unsuccessful, they still struggle, and they have to struggle until they die. So that's also again part of their life, what I observed in my 20 years from Tokyo, Los Angeles, then New York, then a few other American cities, and now in Doha. Oh, on the other, this also connects with my observation in Doha as well. Like in America, they think they believe that they would be able to achieve their American dream, which keeps them working really hard. In Doha, on the other hand, they know that they go to Doha or Gulf countries for 2 years or at best 3 years, right? But they end up extending by 1 year or 2 years until they retire at the age of 60. Right. Again, it is coming to similar end from the other route. It is temporary but permanently temporary, whereas permanency in Japan or America is permanent but never really into it. Right? There is always the gap in the feeling of complete belonging. Right? So that is something I need to explore further, and in my current book I'm writing it, so I'm also making a few contacts in Nepal as well, because I'm interested in looking into Nepali migrants' experience as well, side by side with Bangladeshi migrants' experience in Qatar. Yes?
Orientation seems to be against reducing pain to numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But are you falling into the same trap by reducing their lives, end of lives, to that sad, lonely migrants? That was my thing. Have you fallen into the same trap that you are critical of? Reducing their lives?
That's a valid concern. It appears as reducing their life into the same levels as temporary or permanent. So in my book, again, like self-interest and altruism, I have left it behind. I no longer define them, or I no longer take the definition, official definitions as temporary or as permanent and whatnot. So my focus is now on, like in my previous study, it was what makes sending remittance a normal act for migrants, and this time the migrants are telling that they are neither permanently settling there, but nor they are temporarily staying there. They are just trying their best. So what they call, I summarize again based drawing on anthropological literature, because anthropology is relatively better at reflexive understanding, right? So for example, I use Michael Jackson's theory in Wherewithal of Life, where he explains poor migrants' experience in a really this size books, like 3 migrants came out of University of California Press. And then I use Hagan Hass's theory about how they continue to survive in the face of uncertainty, right? And then I also use Neha Vora's idea about incomplete but still belonging, or some kind of inclusiveness within the structure of kafala system, right? So all these, I am bringing all these perspectives into understanding what the migrants told me repeatedly, that they, in English it would be called endure, how they are enduring while managing their life, as well as trying to meet expectations from family members back home, to learn new skills which would get them into a better position in the job market over there, all this and this. So endurance is my central analytical concept that I'm going to use in my ongoing project. And lastly, about Japan. By the way, one more thing in common between Nepal and Bangladesh is that our migration history is really long. It is even before colonialism came, right? But more so during British colonialism. For example, I know that there is a concept called Lahore, right? Like we have Londoni. In Bangladesh we have Londoni, and you have here Lahore. You know what it means, right? So going back to Japan, the idea of Japan as a homogeneous country is actually socially politically constructed. When I was taking courses on nationalism in Japan, I came across a literature which also point to to a rumor rather that the royal family in Japan has roots in Korea, right? I mean the idea to kind of debunk the idea or question the idea that Japan is homogeneous. It is not naturally homogeneous, it is socio-politically constructed as homogeneous. So younger generations of Japanese believe that they are homogeneous. So much so that the people you said left Japan during immediately after Second World War, mostly in Latin American countries, where one of the they are called Nikkeizins, right? And one of the very famous of those were the president was the president of Peru, Alberto Fujimori, and I guess his daughter is now winning the election in these weeks, right? Sam Fujimori, the daughter of Alberto Fujimori, right? So they were repatriated to Japan with the expectation that Japanese people would accept them as one of them because they are distant relatives, right? So in late 80s and early 90s, Japan allowed a lot of South Asians to migrate over there, but that created a lot of backlash from local population. So Japan government, stopped that kind of migration, but it needed labor, right? So it opened up and encouraged migration of Nikkeizin from South America. So beginning from 1990s and all the way to into 2000s, like a few million of South Asians, South Americans actually migrated, Nikkeizin migrated in Japan. However, they were also not able to actually, permanently settle, and they started going back in just 2 decades. There are, I think one of the book is Ethnic Homeland, something like that, Ethnic Homeland, and the other one similar that came out in 2004, which explains why Nikkeizins were leaving Japan when they were so excited, both them and Japanese people, to bring them into Japan, right? So that again substantiated the idea that younger generation of Japanese believe that they are ethnically homogeneous and they would not have a kind of easy social cultural life side by side with migrants, which puts the political leaders as well as the business leaders into an uneasy situation, because political leaders need the economy grow, the business leaders need and industrialists need labor to run their factory and businesses, but population in general don't want it. So that is a situation in which Japan is kind of struggling, and I think it is a big problem. And these days a lot of readings are coming up. Last week I saw on LinkedIn Nana Oishi. She used to teach at Sophia University, but now she moved a couple of years ago. She moved in Melbourne University. She published an edited volume exactly by exploring how different groups of migrants are contributing to local economy and society in different parts in Japan, and she hopes that this book would bring some positive data as well as present an argument to Japanese population that they need to accept or open up migrant population in order to have a thriving society. Does it answer your question?
I think we can take one more question if there is.
In the back.
Okay, maybe two more questions. One at the back. Please.
Hello sir, my name is Vidya Adhikari. I'm studying MBA in Nepal. My question or my curiosity was, government thinks that remittance has been very unreliably used and disposed, but it should be channeled in investment, what it says. I got a sense of what you think about this, but again, thinking from the economic point of view, do you think because there is remittance, there is high consumption and there is more cash flow, but what government plans is decreasing consumption and increasing investment, and that too in manufacturing sector, because it's so diverse and so scattered, do you think this idea, other than the offensive part, the idea itself, do you think is it implementable for a country like Nepal especially?
So, okay, one more question, and then I will answer.
Well, thank you for your wonderful presentation. Actually, I have a question. I'd like to share my experience regarding the question, Mr. Prati, Madam Prati, and regarding Japan and the America, being based on my experience. I think the Japanese culture, as I studied there for 2 years on the Japanese government scholarship, and as being outsider, I have felt some experiences, and I think I do have some outsider's perspective regarding this migrant thing within the Japanese society. So I think first of all, we need to look how the society is formed. Japanese society, as we have understood, is very homogeneous, and it has been closed for almost 300 years until 1853 when the American promoter Perry, he came and he shot the gun and the port was opened. It was 1853 when the Japan was opened up. So since for last 300 years, Japan was a very closed society, and the concept of the Bushido, the ownership, the feeling of Japanese, the very the concept of this very warrior orientation has shaped the Japanese society. And whereas America, I say, America is a country formed by the migrants. Most of the people, they went from the Europe and rest of the part of the world, where the very indigenous red Americans, they became minority at the moment. But I think this is the reason why, because the root of the formation of America is because it's based on the migration. And whereas Japan had been closed for 300 years, and they have this concept of outsider, not only of the non-native Japanese, but also there is a term called hafu for those child who are born from the Japanese and non-Japanese parents. So even Japan right now, the individual is not regarded as complete Japanese. In that case, the migrants from the rest of the world, I think that's a very social root which has created this kind of differences. And also I'd like to put one query that we are talking about the remittances as belongingness, but I think that this is being based on the remittances sent back to the home country by the first generation of migrants. But is it possible? Can we maintain that same belongingness in the second and third generation? Can you see that? Can you see that potential, that possibility of having that intensity of belongingness in the long term? Thank you.
Excellent questions and reflections. Again, I will go in the reverse order. I will take your question, answer your question first. About closeness in Japan for last 300 years is actually the official narrative, and by which I mean, and I imply that there are non-official narratives as well. So any graduate level course on nationality and nationalism in Japan actually would discuss many of those. So I don't want to get into that debate in this because I don't have enough time. But I would I'll tell you just that it is true that there is a core, normative core, like Japanese. Same applies to America as well. Although migrants from varieties of countries, different parts of the world entered into America and made America great, which Donald Trump is trying to make it again, right? They also have a normative core called WASP, W-A-S-P, White Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Anybody falling outside of that normative core is a hyphenated American. Even becoming a president from outside of the box would not protect someone and give someone full belonging. So Barack Obama is mocked as Barack Hussein Obama, right? Even becoming president did not give him full belonging because he is outside of the normative box. Similar normative mainstream, idea of normative mainstream applies in Nepal, in Bangladesh as well. In every nation state, this is one of the very unfortunate historical time we are living, we are find ourselves, because every nation state is racist. Each and every nation state is racist, centering on that normative mainstream, right? Qatar is, Middle East countries are racist because they have normative mainstream, which is codified into their constitution. Japan has it codified into the constitution. US doesn't have it codified in the constitution, but in practice it is very much so, right? So again, the idea of belonging. Anybody who is within the core mainstream would feel belonging comparatively more than anybody who is outside of the core. Be it third child kid, you just mentioned one, third children kid, they have their own challenges. If you go to literature, you would see third child kid, okay? That would give you some sense of, kind of like example. And comparing Japan and US, I would take that nation state context. Within that, I would take mainstream, normative mainstream and outside of mainstream. Bangladeshis continue to feel lack of belonging. And you said whether I can apply this idea into third and fourth generation migrants. This is of course based on first generation migrants. But in my narration, perhaps I did not make it clear enough. Even in one same individual's lifetime, the sense of belonging keeps changing. So across the generation, it will do more so, right? It is not unidirectional. It is multi-directional, based on the context in which the individual finds himself or herself would likely experience sense of belonging at different level. And based on whether if the sense of belonging is strong, then remittance would be more frequent in larger number. If the belonging is less, then remittance would be less frequent and smaller in number. If there is no sense of belonging, no remittance. Period. Right? I hope I answered your question. So I come back to you. It's easy to answer your question. You said keeping aside migrants' perspective and taking the state's perspective. I totally agree with you, because state is interested in managing the economy effectively. So for the state, of course, investing in income generation, investing in manufacture, investing in education, health are better, because all these investments kind of like help infrastructure to grow, help economy to grow, right? The state is responsible to think about the entire nation. The migrant is responsible only to think about the family. And you know what? So these are unlikely to go along well. The state will keep making claims and telling people, don't do this, don't do that, because those are like wasting important resources. Rather channel those into these things. And individuals say, no. I need to. My daughter needs a very expensive wedding present. My younger brother needs to buy the latest model of motorbike. These are really two different worlds. Migrants' world is different than the state's world. So there will likely be conflicts and confusions and competition and accusing one another. The migrant would say, no, I'm not going to trust the government, it's corrupt. And the government, on the other hand, would say, these people don't know anything, they just earn money and squander it here and there, right? It goes on, and it is likely to go on, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for this wonderful lecture, and we had a very interesting discussion and interesting questions. So let us all thank Dr. Hasan Mahmud for his lecture, and we also have one token of love from Social Science class, which we
Thank you so very much. I'm really honored. And I really enjoyed this crowd and the Q&A session. This was very very good experience. I have been presenting in many places. You heard some of those, and this is by far one of the most pleasing experience. Thank you so very much.